Well, welcome everybody back to the Subliminal Show. I have the honor of being able to sit down with Aaron Neumayer. He and I go way back to our undergrad days at good old Bethel University. We've actually had a string of graduates from the good old university. That's kind of our theme as of late, apparently. Those are the people that I can get to rope into my projects. But who is Aaron and what does he do? He is a CPA, which, as we were discussing earlier, I wanted to call him a certified CPA. But come to find out, CPA stands for Certified Public Accountant, for those who don't know. Clearly, I am not an expert on this field, and that's why I invited Aaron to talk about it. But yeah, just so everyone knows, you don't have to sound like a fool anymore calling someone a certified CPA. He's also an Eagle Scout. That was a huge part of his childhood and growing up, and just a big part of who he is, and just kind of the skills that he's learned. And he's also a personal financial coach, and so just loves to be able to sit down and talk with people about finances. What does it mean to manage it well? What does it mean to just have that conversation? More often than not, people stray away from the financial conversation and aren't willing to engage it in a healthy way. And he's willing to create that space and be able to help others manage it well. So, Aaron, is there anything else that you would want to introduce or talk about or mention?
No, I think you covered all. And I don't know if I'd call myself an expert, but I am someone who likes to be in that space and learn as much as I can and help other people with it. So we're going to do our best here.
One of the things that Aaron loves to talk about is just personal development and what that looks like and wanting to pursue just development, I guess. Good old English language and the diversity of words, and not being able to find them when you need them. And then our second topic, we will talk about financial health and wellness. But we'll go ahead and start with personal development and what kind of that looks like. But my first question is, when approaching goals and wanting to pursue personal development, how do you prepare for it?
Yeah, so I think that's different for everybody, which is why it's kind of cool to me, because it really comes down to who do you want to be and who do you want to become. So usually when people start with that, I like to ask them a question like that, who do you want to be, who do you want to become, or where do you want to be in life, something like that. And then we have to try to work backwards to think, well, what type of person is that? What type of actions do they do? What type of habits do they have? What type of lifestyle do they have? What hobbies do they have? Those types of things. And you think about those types of interactions and you try to figure out and you get a mental picture of, I want to be this person. And then you can kind of work backwards and say, and pick it apart and figure out, okay, piece by piece, if I start to build those habits, I start to do those things, I build that lifestyle, you slowly become that person. And that can take a long time. And in many cases, there's never a final destination. With this, it's very much an ongoing journey of trying to become what I like to call the best version of somebody, which the best version of somebody is an ever-growing, ever-learning person. It's an ever expanding version of yourself. So that's usually where I like to start with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's really, really cool of really imagining it as a step-by-step process. And it's something that is a lifelong journey that you can take. Okay. What are some roadblocks individuals typically, or you, have and may faced when attempting to reach personal goals?
Yeah, so again, depends on the goal, but I would say the biggest one is when you don't see results. So you can even think you've got the best game plan in the world. You're doing maybe you research the heck out of something, and you got your plan in place. You're doing everything you can, and it's still nothing's going. I would say that's probably the biggest roadblock, is not feeling like you're making any progress, because that's what humans need to see to be able to keep going. Is we need to see that our efforts are doing something.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to keep going when nothing's changing. I would say that's probably the biggest one, and you see this with people. A big one is if someone's trying to, lose weight or something. If you go on a diet and you're doing it for a few weeks or something and nothing's changing, that's pretty disheartening. And you try to figure out what's going wrong, or some people give up entirely and try again. 3 months later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say when there's a lack of progress, that's the biggest roadblock.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I know when I think about my projects and the things that I've done, there is a lot of hesitancy when it doesn't quite get the results that I originally envisioned or intended, and it is very easy to just want to give up in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much depends on what the goal is too. Because some things, for weight loss, for example, okay, if you're not seeing changes within a couple weeks, either 5-10 pounds in a couple weeks or something, you might want to rethink your strategy. Whereas if you're trying to build a small business, you might not see anything for 6 months.
Yeah.
Even then, it's still going to be just just a little bit, just a small gain here and there. And it just depends on what it is too. So just because something isn't changing in 2 weeks, depending on what the goal is, doesn't mean it isn't working. There are many things that just take a lot of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that kind of leads into a little bit to like the second question in regards to that of like, is there a time when the blocks are too big? And does that really just play into it really depends on the situation and the goal you're trying to make?
Yeah, well, I would say for that one, it's almost more about you than it is about the goal at that point. Because let's say you have this dream of you want to open a coffee shop or something, and like you've wanted to open a coffee shop for years, and you finally get to the point where you're like, I'm going to do it. We're going to open this coffee shop, and you open the coffee shop, and a few months go by, you kind of like trickle along. It's not really going anywhere quite yet, but you're doing enough to keep it running. And then you think about different strategies. You try to learn the industry. You try to do what you can, and it still doesn't change, 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 and you're years into it and nothing's happening. Well, then it might be the point where you're saying, okay, was this something that you really want to keep going? Because I do believe that there are a lot of goals that if you just keep going, eventually you will meet something, right? But you might also drive yourself crazy first. That's the struggle there too. So I think at that point you need to be honest with yourself in the situation. Again, different depending on what the goal is. Find some sort of objective and quantitative benchmark to say, if we don't hit this marker by this time period, we need to understand that we gave it our best shot. We can say we tried, but it's probably time to pack this one up. And that doesn't mean we can't try again later. That doesn't mean we can't give it another shot, another swing later. But to have some sort of objective benchmark that says we need this by this time, and if that doesn't happen, we're calling it on it. So there can be depending on who the person is, right? Because you really have to be at peace with that in yourself to say, I gave it my best shot. I tried. This was a dream of mine that I had, and I swung for the fences, and it didn't work. And if you can be at peace with that, I don't think that should be counted as a failure. That's counted as experience. And I don't remember who said the quote. I wish I could remember who said the quote. But it goes, and I'm not even going to quote it right. I'm going to paraphrase it because I can't remember the exact quote or who said it. But basically, the quote says, when you try and you fail and you try again, well, the next time you're not starting from nothing, you're starting from experience. So it's very important to, if you've got a goal, go for it. And if you fail, so what? The more important thing is you tried. And there's a great book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, and in it he talks about this idea that successful people fail a lot, but it's
Yeah.
because they learn from their failures. And so they have this upward cycle of trying something, fail at it, learn, try something new. Well, they make adjustments. So try something, fail at it, make adjustments. Try something, fail at it, make adjustments. Try something, fail at it, make it just, and they have this upward spiral, and that's why they
Yeah.
become successful. Is because they're willing to fail more than other people are.
Okay.
So, and again, I don't remember who said it, but there's an old old basketball piece of wisdom that don't, you want to be able to shoot so that, not so that you can make it, you want to be able to learn to shoot so that you can't miss. Like, that's what you want to do. And again, I don't know, people who like basketball know that way more than I do. I just remember seeing it one day, and I think it was on with basketball stuff, and I was like, that's a really good piece of advice, actually. And it makes a lot of sense in sports, but yeah. So to come back to your question, is it ever a point where the roadblocks get too hard? I think the answer, honestly, is yes. But you also you need an objective benchmark to say, if it doesn't happen by here, I'm gonna have to like shut down this strategy and try to think of something else. And you also need to be at peace with it, because if you say that, if you give yourself that objective and quantitative measure and you are not at peace with whatever happens, that benchmark's not going to matter. You're going to do whatever you want, one way or the other.
Yeah.
So I think you got to be honest with yourself too, and have a conversation with yourself, and maybe have some conversation with people around you too, about what's going on, and see how it goes too.
Okay. So really, like you said, situational, but evaluating your goals, figuring out, what are some objective steps that I can, or objective small goals that I can take and I can reach at a certain point in time that are reasonable, that you can measure by either yourself and what you've evaluated, as well as reaching out to others and talking about it, bouncing ideas off, and maybe grounding your idea in some level of realism.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's very attempting to measure things in a way that is encouraging whether or not this is worth all the effort that's being put in or not.
Right, and also telling yourself that you have to have a way to measure it, because if you were to say, if someone were to tell me where I'm trying to work on myself, I want to become the best version of me. Well, it's a very real question to say, well, how are you doing that? And also, how do you know you're making any progress?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that you're getting there? How do you know whatever you're trying to do is working? Another thing you might think of is that goals can change over time, and who you want to become might change over time. Maybe when you're in your early 20s, just maybe you just finished college, and let's say you go to the finance industry, just like I'm in the financial world. People go in the financial world and think that I want to make a ton of money. Now, there's nothing wrong with me wanting to make a lot of money, but that might be their goal at that time. Whereas 15 years later, maybe they're married, they have a couple kids in a house. Maybe their goal isn't, I want to make a ton of money. It's, I want to make enough to support my family that I have, to take care of the bills, and to be able to invest wisely for the future. Because that's a completely different system, completely different set of objectives than I want to make a lot of money. Well, because even making a lot of money is, well, what's a lot of money? Is that 100K a year? Is that 50K a year? Is that 500K a year? What is a lot?
Yeah.
So, and it can change over time too, I guess is my point for that.
Yeah. And that's something that's really highly reflected in the mental health field as well, of when you come into counseling, there are different goals that you establish and you want to be able to work towards, and sometimes it's even over the course of the week that life suddenly hits you with a beanbag out of nowhere, and you're not even close to a gym, and just like, whoa, I'm in the middle of the forest. Where'd this beanbag come from? And it suddenly just changes your course of where you're headed and what your goals are. And you need to be able to adjust to those things and being able to encourage and say it's okay, and we can work on this before we work our way back to get to these other goals. So, okay. And I think that really answers the second part of that question of like, when do you give up on your goals? It's really very situational, and but also, you know, how much I think if I can summarize what you've said so far correctly, it's evaluating the effort that you've put in, as well as your individual motivation to actually reach it. And if they're not equal, and if they're not, you know, working progressively towards that, then maybe that's time to be able to take a step back.
Yeah, that along with results. What results are you getting from your efforts? Because at first, it's going to be a lot of effort and probably minimal results. That's often the case for many, many, many things. And depending on what it is, like if it's losing weight versus starting a business, that's going to be an even, you know, a different time period of when each of those are going to work. It just depends on, again, subjective to the goal that you're trying to do. But if your effort for a long period of time, if you're putting in a lot of effort and you're not seeing results that you're happy with for an extended period of time, for like a very long extended period of time, this goal of yours is going to drive you crazy. It's not going to go well, and that is definitely a time to at least reevaluate. Maybe not necessarily give up, but definitely reevaluate and figure out what's going on there. So I think that's another thing to keep in mind.
That makes sense. So switching a little bit of the conversation, and more in terms of personal development. Speaking from an individual who loves being comfortable, as I think most of us do, and when change and wanting to pursue, you know, making ourselves better. Typically, at least I know for me personally, it's, well, why would I want to do that? I'm perfect how I am. So, you know, just kidding.
Well, yeah. So I think that's a really good question, because it's one that people do ask. Like, well, why would I exercise? Because I mean, the doctor says you know, I'm not doing that bad. Or, you know, why would I want to get my finances in order? Because I'm not going bankrupt. You know, I pay the bills we pay the bills every month. It's fine. So I think there's a fine line, because I think being content is good. You want to be content with where you are. But what I don't want to, I guess for me personally, what I try to encourage other people is but you don't want to be complacent. You don't want to be in the spot where like, well, I don't got to do anything. Life is good. It's fine. Well, that's not how the world works, because if you were to stop, you might be fine for now, but you won't be fine later. And in the world of sports, the people who have reached the highest levels, they didn't stop practicing. They reached their level of success because of their hard work, and maybe they didn't practice as much, maybe they didn't grind as hard, I don't really know. But I know that they didn't quit entirely until they retired, and I'm gonna guess even then that they're still fairly active. So that's kind of the mindset that I try to encourage people to have, because you can be content, and it's great to be content. People like me who are very objective oriented, very achievement oriented, very much like, give me the checklist, I'm going to get through that thing as fast as I can. Tell me how to get the A, and I'm going to do it. We kind of struggle with being content, and say the A- is fine, or the B+ is fine. You know, that's because if you did everything you could, it's okay that happens, and you can be content with that. So there is a not a paradigm. There is a continuum there, and people fall along it in various places. So being content is good, but being complacent is the risk, because being complacent is where you stop being proactive with life. You stop being proactive on how to become a better version of you. Because if you were to think about it, and if you were to be honest with yourself, each one of us, you could ask yourself, is there something in your life that you know you could be better at? that would make you better? Is there something you could do that would make you better? Now, maybe that's a very qualitative thing. Maybe it's you need to be more patient, because I know I need to be more patient. Like that's something I need to work on. I know that, and so I already know I am not the best version of me because I am not as patient as I know I could be. Yep. So to me, content means you are happy and thankful for where things are, but you are still making efforts to say, how can I improve this? And it's not even necessarily improvement for you. I think that's also where we get a little misguided in our society, is that if you're doing anything and it's for you, obviously you're benefiting for you. Well, maybe part of it is, I want to exercise for the health of myself. This is true. But I also want to exercise for the health of myself so that I can be around my wife, so that I can be around my family, so that, maybe one day if I have children, I can be around for them. I can be around for, my parents as they're getting older and such, as the stages of life move forward. That's just one example. And same thing with personal finance too. Why would I want to get my personal finances in order? I'm in my 20s. I'm fine. It'll be fine. Well, I can tell you right now, just the way finances work, the earlier you get it figured out and the earlier you get down that process, the better you are. Because the earlier you get organized, the earlier you take care of that, the earlier you start investing, the longer the time value of money works in your favor, and the better off you'll be. And it's absolutely astounding the number difference between, starting now and starting 7 years from now. We're talking very large sums of money. Not that money is everything again, because it's not. But it can create opportunities as well as take care of other people, because it's a tool, and so you can use that tool for good. Again, for the benefit of your immediate family, strangers around you, extended family, friends, so on and so forth.
I think that's absolutely critical as well, of being able to better ourselves for the sake of others. And I think, and I've noticed when we examine especially our Western American culture that is so centered around this idea of Lone Ranger, individualistic, like very all about us
all
and
about
what I can
you.
achieve. I think we miss out, and this is what at least I love just about where kind of the mental health field is taking us, is really recognizing all of this research of just like, we need people, we need these relationships in order to maintain just normal, everyday, healthy mental health. And it's absolutely incredible to me, these studies that come out of just like, your depression and anxiety lessens when you have a consistent relationship with another individual that you can trust and be willing to open up with, and journey through life together. And it's just like, wow, it's so crazy. And I think what you're talking about is very critical as well, of maybe that's where we're getting our additional motivation to say, this is why I'm doing this, and it's to help others.
Oh, absolutely. I say we is because I know other financial coaches and financial advisors that do similar things that I do, and many of them will say, well, you need to find your why, because your why has to be bigger than you. Because if it's just for you and the journey gets hard, you're gonna burn out and give up. But if your why is to say, I'm going to work my tail off to clean up my finances in the next 3 years so that I can change my financial future for the next 3 decades, which is a very, very real scenario. I see people with that scenario all the time, because they know that means for their kids, that their kids' lives will be so much different, because their kids will not live and make the same mistakes, hopefully, that they made, simply because as they're going through those hard times, or those difficult, discipline times, they can teach them. They can teach their kids these principles and habits and what they're doing. And as their kids grow up, they will be very familiar with money and not to make those mistakes. And they're going to know what to do. And they'll have a completely different start in their adult life.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. We often get too caught up in the well, if I can't do the whole thing, I might as well not even try. And I struggle with that too. When I think of things that I want to do, like, well, I know I can't do that, so why would I even try? Why would I even start? And in reality, doing a little bit, it helps a lot, and it will give you encouragement. Do you go a little further the next day, maybe, and eventually do hit that? So I remember one very similar fashion. I forget which book it was, but the author was talking about how, if you're trying to get in shape and you want to go run or something, maybe start by just putting on your running shoes. Don't even go for a run. Just put on the shoes and then take them off.
Yeah.
And then, tomorrow, maybe put on your shoes and walk outside and then go back inside.
Yeah, that's great.
Because is that all you could commit to for the day?
Yeah.
And that's all you can commit to for the day. You made it. You did it. And
that's cool.
Small steps like that.
I really do. So we'll go ahead and switch over to our second topic in terms of financial health and wellness. So if you could just first start off by just defining that, of just what is financial health and wellness?
Yeah, so I don't think there's a true definition out there, so I'll give you the best one I can. I'd say it's having a confident understanding of your financial situation with a plan in motion to get where you want to be. So for what that looks like often with the clients I work with is very much you have a budget, which is a very scary word for some people. And I want to encourage people to say budget's not a scary word. It's just another word for a plan. That's all it is. And plans can change.
Yeah.
So it's just a plan. That's all it is. You have a plan for your money. You have a budget, usually broken down month by month. So you would plan for the budget for the following month. So like for December, sometime at the end of November, you would plan December's budget. And then depending on where you are with your finances, if you have debt, depending on your savings situation, if you own a home, or if if you're renting, where you want to go with your financial situation. What does a good financial situation look like to you? Retirement. Well, retirement now is changing for what people think it will be. Most people don't expect to be not working at all. They expect they will be working, but it's usually doing a job that they enjoy doing, that they want to do and get paid for it, not necessarily the job they have now, because they really need the income. And I know that it's starting to shift a little bit. But what does that look like for some people? What does that look like for you specifically? And do you have a plan in motion to get there? Because some people, their plan, their dream retirement is, I want to live on the beach in California in a big old house. And okay, well, most of the people who have that didn't just wander around and get there. Maybe they got some sort of really big income from being a movie star or rock star or something, but not everyone. And unless you've got an income like that, you're probably gonna need a plan to get there. And working with someone such as myself to get you through the motions, to get you going. And then when you're ready to really start investing, I'm working with a good financial advisor, because I am not a financial advisor. Financial advisors deal with investments and insurance usually. Now, I will give you information, as much information as I can about those things. But I do know financial advisors, and I do refer people to them. Usually I give them a couple different advisors to talk to, because you don't want to just talk with, don't use just the first one that you talk to. Don't do that. Make sure you talk to 2, 3, maybe even 4 if you can, because there are different different personalities work better with different people, and you shouldn't speak with more than one. That's usually what it looks like for me coaching people is, do you have that monthly budget process down? Do you know where you want to be? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? As specific as you can, Sometimes it's not super specific. That's okay. Just any information that you can to say, if I were here in 5 years, I'd feel like I'm making good progress. And if I'm here in 10 years, I'd feel like I'm making good progress. Things like that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that definition. And so really what kind of got you interested into this field of finances and financial health and all this?
Yeah, so after graduating with my accounting degree, I realized I went through a personal finance course, a very famous one, but I won't mention what it's called. After graduating with my accounting degree and going through this course on personal finance, I realized I knew a lot of things about corporate finance because that's what you learn mostly with an accounting degree, and I realized I knew nothing about personal finance. So that course made me come to a fork in the road that pretty much said I can either do what I want and ignore all of this information, or I stop making excuses and I follow as best as I can to my abilities what this information said. Because as I went through the course, I agreed with most of the information and I couldn't argue it. Like they had been laid out in such a way that I couldn't figure out anything in it that said, nope, that doesn't work. I know better than you. That doesn't make sense. Whereas it was laid out in a way that's like, no, it seems like y'all got this figured out. Now, there's more than one way to build wealth and to do well financially. I'm not saying there's only one way to do it. However, the way that was laid out for me, what got me interested in it is after doing that and applying it to my own life as much as I can, and my now wife, at the time we were dating, I would relay the information to her, and she applied it to her life separately and got really good results. So after doing that for a couple years, my roommate at the time, my wife and I were about to get married, so we were moving out, and my roommate at the time was like, well, I can't afford this apartment on my own. I need to start, looking at other apartment situations. The problem is I really don't know how much I can afford in rent. And so I asked him, like, well, you want to sit down and I can help you make a budget and we can see, where the numbers fall and everything and try to get a good idea. So we did that, and he gives me permission to tell this story, and I really like telling the story because it makes me look good. So it took us about 2 hours to make that budget, and we figured out a good amount for him as far as housing goes, which I think he actually found a place cheaper than that with some friends, so that worked out really well for him. And since then, he was someone. He was my roommate in college too. So after we graduated, we had moved into an apartment together. And since that's happened, he's paid off over $10,000 of the student loans from 1 2-hour conversation. And I should check with him what the number is now, because that was like a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now. But like I said, he gives me permission to tell that story because it makes me sound really good. Plus, he exactly. And again, all credit to him though too, because after we laid it out on this budget and we kind of gave him a plan of, all right, let's take care of this, then take care of this, and get rid of these student loans. He was all in, and he kept his lifestyle pretty simple. He didn't, have a lot of extravagant expenses. On his days off from his regular job, he had he would take 1 or 2 days a week working for his dad, and so his day off he was still working, and he took all that extra income and threw it at these student loans, and so he worked really hard on this too. Still a little bit of ways to go just with the loans that he had, but still making that progress, and I think that was $10,000 in a year. So to make that progress from 1 2-hour conversation, that's how we got there. And after that, I was like, I wonder if I could do this for as some sort of business model or something. Is this a thing? Like, can people do this? And I did a little bit of research, and it turns out a personal finance coach is a thing. So the same organization, the same company that I took the personal finance course with, they also offer a course to become a personal finance coach.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
much more in depth, much more details, much
Yeah.
longer course. But I did. I went through that to get their information, to be able to learn more and to be able to help people.
Awesome. Next question is, finances can generally tend to be an awkward subject. Typically, more often than not, I know, at least for me, working with couples, finances is one of the last things that they talk about. Nobody wants to talk about it, at least in that sphere. But how does one have a healthy conversation about it, like either with a significant other or just other people in general?
Ooh, that's a really good question, and I'm going to give the standard accountant answer and say it depends, because
Yeah.
everybody's different, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if you're having that conversation with a significant other, that's going to be, depending on if you're married or not, in my opinion, changes the conversation. Because if you're married, you guys are in it together, and there's a lot of a lot of grace, and a lot of listening is going to need to happen in any of these conversations.
Mm.
But even more so if you're already married. Now, if you're dating or something and you want to make sure you're on the same page, that is a very intentional conversation. That again, it's going to take a lot of grace, a lot of listening to each other, but
Mm-hmm.
also understanding what are your priorities and are your goals
Mm.
the same? Do you want to achieve the same things financially?
Yeah.
Very much something that should be kept in mind. And if you have some sort of premarital counseling, it's often in that premarital counseling. Not all
Mm-hmm.
of it, or not always, I should say, but a lot of times.
Yeah.
So that's how that can be. I'm going to tell you, if you are trying to have that conversation with your parents because your parents are doing things with money, like, no, that's not a good idea. Aaron, the finance coach, said so. I'm going to tell you right now, your parents probably don't want to hear your opinion about money. They probably
Fair
don't.
enough.
So unless they ask, I would not even go there.
Mm.
Occasionally, my parents ask for my opinion. If they listen to it or not, I have no idea. But they
Mm.
know what I do and they know my background, so they
Yeah.
do every now and then ask for what I think about something, and whether
Mm-hmm.
they implement it or not, I have no idea. But sometimes they
Yeah.
do. Um, but when it comes to, so then it changes. Like, well, what about friends? Well, that depends on the friend and the situation too.
Mm.
Some of my
Okay.
friends, they know my opinion about how to handle money is much different than theirs, and so they will talk to me. They will talk to me about things, but that doesn't mean they want my advice on things. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, I'm telling you this information, and usually my response is, I mean, that's an option. Like, yeah, you can do that. Like, that's usually what it is, and we have an understanding.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
know that I don't necessarily agree with what they're doing, but that,
Mm-hmm.
they're good friends. So I love them.
Yeah.
I love them either way, whether they're not. I would make their same choices is beyond the point. Um,
Yeah.
so it's hard to keep back, because you don't want to give unsolicited advice.
Mm-hmm.
Unsolicited advice often does not go over well. Um, so it really depends. Is someone actually asking
Mm.
for the advice or for the information, or are they just talking? Because sometimes just talking can also sound like a question. It's not a question. It's just
Yeah.
talking. But as far as it goes with, for people like a spouse, or if you're dating or engaged or something, that conversation is wanting to make sure you're on the same page. So asking, what do you think about money? What does retirement for us look like in the future? How do we get there?
Mm.
What are as many details as you can give us? What does that look like for you? What do you think about that? And
Yeah.
trying to make sure that you're on the same page. For the couples that I coach, one of the comments I hear a lot that they are happy for is that they meet with me. It gives them a dedicated space to have money conversations.
Mm.
Because before, in the hustle bustle of life, those conversations just kind of get pushed to the wayside or rushed through and they don't really happen.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm giving them a time and a place to talk about it with, and they can ask me for as much information as they want, to figure out what's a good idea, what's not, what are the trends in the industry, how do things usually work, how do we
Mm-hmm.
get there, is it even possible, things like
Mm-hmm.
that.
So if you could offer us just some practical ways that people can help manage finances, my little caveat there, without giving away all your trade secrets, so you can still sell your so your financial coaching, and people could reach out and do that. But just maybe a short list of 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. So number 1 is pay attention, also known as budget.
Fair enough.
Make a budget, a monthly budget, and you want it to be what's called a zero-based budget. So that's all of your income minus all of your expenses should equal 0. And that's a really good way to say every dollar that you have come in is assigned to do something. And there are apps out there to help. One of them is my personal favorite one is the one made by Dave Ramsey's company. It's free. It's called Every Dollar. It's on all the app stores and stuff. I don't think you or I are getting paid for saying that. It's just a really good app. And I would say that, this is not an ad or a promotional thing. I just think it works really well. I have looked at other budgeting apps, and I won't name them, but I wasn't impressed because to me they were more expense trackers. They weren't really a budget. Now, expense tracking is part of the process. You need to do that. Yeah. It's the only way to know if, actuals, if what you thought was going to happen actually happened. That's the only way to know. But a budget is very much thinking ahead, whereas if you only have an expense tracker, you're constantly looking backwards. And there's a reason that, windshields are a lot bigger than a rear view mirror. So
wow.
somebody else said that. I don't know who said that. I read a lot of stuff, so guaranteed I didn't. Yeah. That is not from me. Someone else said that.
Yeah. That's a good analogy for just about
anything
a lot of things. So yeah.
Again, I can't totally remember who said that, but it's not me. So I'm not taking credit for that one. I just don't remember who said it. So number 1 is budget. And all the things that come with it. Number 2, do everything you can to get out of or stay out of debt, because debt will steal your investing power. And number 3 is invest once you can. And I very much recommend waiting to invest until after you are out of consumer debt, which is anything that's your house isn't consumer debt. Like a mortgage isn't consumer debt, but pretty much everything else is, like a car loan, student loan, medical debt, stuff like that. Pay those off, and then once those are paid off, you will have a lot more freed up income, and then you can invest with purpose and intentionality. And you may need to use a good financial advisor to do that. And there's no shame in that. I have a financial advisor to help with investing because I don't want to pay attention to all that stuff. They're a good person to talk to have that professional in your corner. So that would be my 3 things: as make sure you're budgeting, pay attention to what's going on, pay off your debt and or stay out of it, and then 3 is invest intentionally and if you need the help of a financial advisor to do so, definitely do so.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sounds like if I knew more about this world, I'd be like, wow, that was really great advice, but I'm just going to assume it's just great advice and just be like, let's go.
I'm sure if I said it to enough people, someone would disagree with me, but that's okay.
Well, isn't that just how the world works? So as we begin to kind of wrap up and with our kind of last question, I see mental health in here. That's me. Okay, so finances and mental health have more of a connection than most people think. I don't know if you've recognized this or been able to see it just in your work, but I know at least from my side of the coin, finances can tend to lead to a lot of additional stress and anxiety and worries about the future and being like, I don't know what it looks like, and it can I've at least seen it attribute in that way, and I don't know other ways that you've seen. But what have you seen in that, and either personally if you're willing to share, or in some of your clients that if you're allowed to share?
So there's a couple things that immediately comes to mind. One is, if you do have debt, getting rid of it will take a weight off of your chest that you didn't know was there. And now maybe you know that part of it's there, maybe you feel a little bit of that stress, a little bit of that pressure, But when it is gone, your shoulders are going to feel a whole lot lighter. And that is one thing that people do not often take into account, is not only the mental health, the psychological, but also the physiological stress relief of not owing someone money. On top of that is when you're in that position, and let's say you've got, a rainy day fund, emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, that also gives you some leeway for life's decisions. So the best example I can give for this is this last summer we bought a new to us vehicle for my wife, and which is a whole other thing, because that was a 3-year plan of me setting aside a little bit of money over 3 years to be able to buy a car like this outright. And I finally got to see it come to fruition. It took 3 years, but it finally worked. And that, we paid for this, newest vehicle we've ever owned in our lives. And paid for it outright, paid cash for it. And we were driving it back to our home, and I had this thought in my head that was comforting of, this thing could blow up tomorrow. Like, this whole car that we just bought, the most expensive vehicle I've ever purchased in my life, costs actually more than all of the vehicles I have purchased put together. The most expensive vehicle we have bought could just up and stop running tomorrow. And that would be very, very unfortunate. But we would be okay. Because we hadn't sold her other car yet, so we still had it. It would be annoying, but we would still keep using the other one. But even if we didn't have that vehicle anymore, we have an emergency fund that we could go and get essentially this car again. And that would be annoying to use it would be unfortunate, it would be disappointing, it would be all of those emotions, but we wouldn't be in the situation where, oh man, if this thing doesn't work out, this is really, really bad. It changed it from being this awful, terrible thing to, well, this is really inconvenient and annoying and kind of dumb, but we'll be okay. And I've never had that relief before when purchasing a vehicle. Every other time in my life of purchasing a vehicle, was like, I hope this works. I hope it's okay. Because I wasn't
praying that the rust holds on one more day.
And you take it to a mechanic and have them look it over and hope, like, all right, tell me nothing's like terribly wrong with this thing. But so those are the two examples. Is one, if you owe money, whatever it is, especially if you owe money to a family member or someone take care of that as soon as possible, because that changes your relationship whether you know it or not. But owing money to anyone at all, being in debt, it does put a pressure on you whether you realize it or not. And when it is gone, you will feel a tremendous relief. And then the other way that I've noticed, and I'm sure there are others that don't think about it, is to know that if something were to happen, we have thought ahead, we have prepared to be okay. If a car goes down, if I were to lose my job, if my wife were to lose her job, that would be unfortunate, and it would, we would have to make some decisions. But on the financial side, we would be okay, at least for a little while. We could, we wouldn't be, oh man, we got to get that income. I need to find a new job tomorrow. No, obviously you'd want to go do that and replace it as soon as you can. But if it weren't, if something were to happen and we couldn't replace, one of our incomes for, a few months, having an emergency fund, a rainy day fund set aside, we'd be okay. We'd have to change some things of our lifestyle, but we would be okay. And that is good to know. It's a good feeling.
Okay. So really it's balancing and being able to reduce those extra stressors that sometimes we don't even realize are there.
Like, everybody's got enough things going on in their life that you don't need finances to be one more thing. You don't need that catalyst. You don't need
absolutely.
You don't need that thing causing you more stress, more issues, more problems. And that's why taking care of is such a big thing. It's also probably why it's the number one thing that married couples fight about is money. So when you're on the same page, it makes the rest of life, it's one less thing that you're worried about because you're on the same page. And it's one less thing you have to stress about if you're, prepared and ahead of time and you're taking care of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you for being willing to come on to the show and talk about these.
Thanks for
talk
having
about
me.
these things that you're passionate about and knowledgeable about. And while you may not claim expertshipness, it certainly sounds to me you know your stuff, and I appreciate your advice as well as just your knowledge and wisdom about these two areas, and being able to continue to promote as we attempt to on the show. But this idea of holistic health, of addressing all of these different areas, and I think maybe we need to add to our definition financial health as well, because it is a big part of who we are just in the world that we live in. And I really like what you said about, money is important because we do rely so much on it, but it is not the ultimate, support for us, in the sense that we shouldn't be relying all of our mental health on it to determine, who we are and what we are. But is there anything else that you want to plug, places that people can find you, anything else that you're up to?
So you can find me on Facebook at Aaron Neumayer Financial Coaching. It's my name in financial coaching, and then my website is financialcoaching.com, so you can go there too. I post blogs every now and then. I'm not very good at doing it, but there are some up there. You can also schedule a meeting with me if you'd like to speak with me. You can schedule a meeting there, or reach out on Facebook too. That works as well. But those are really the two main things. So appreciate you having me on the show.
Of course. Thank you for being a guest, and thank you everybody for watching and listening, no matter what platform you're on.